JFT. Happy Earth Day to you. This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. And actually, I'm not sure I should say Happy Earth Day, what with the planet heating up and all. But on Sunday, the mood was upbeat at the Earth Day celebration in Washington, D.C.
Today's the Earth Day concert. They have all sorts of bands. The Flaming Lips, Mo, and Los Lobos are playing.
On tonight's program, Your Job and Your Democracy. On a regular segment, Recession FAQ, experts in starting a business will advise us on how to transform that pink slip into greenbacks. Then we'll put a microscope to the City Council. What exactly do they do all day? But first, here are this week's online video picks. Number one, from the group WatchMojo.com, here's a brief segment of their video history of Earth Day.
Earth Day marks the anniversary of the day where 20 million Americans demonstrated for a healthy and sustainable environment. Coast-to-coast rallies were organized, and groups that had been protesting toxic dumps, pesticides, the loss of wilderness, the extinction of wildlife, oil spills, and other ecological issues finally realized they were all trying to fight the same battle. The unique aspect of Earth Day 1970 was that it brought together Republicans and Democrats, rich and poor, and people with seemingly different beliefs and backgrounds. In short, Earth Day 1970 began the environmental awareness campaign that continues today. The day led to the creation of the United States Environmental Protection Agency.
Speaking of pollution, by now you might have caught wind of the disgusting video involving Domino's Pizza. Some employees, now former employees, taking liberties with the recipe, shall we say. Here is part of what viewers find an irresistible piece of YouTube fluff. Well, maybe fluff isn't exactly the word.
Do it again, do it again.
My special Italian sandwich.
And on the sandwich it goes. We all have our secret ingredients. Yeah. See? Now he just farted on the salami that goes on these sandwiches.
Okay, so two jokers made a dumb video, but in today's world it gets forwarded a gazillion times and people start to think this is what Domino's actually does, like it's a secret ingredient. So Domino's produced this video, our video pick number 2 for this week. It's a response and posted direct to YouTube.
Hello, I'm Patrick Doyle, president of Domino's USA. Recently, we discovered a video of 2 Domino's team members who thought that their acts would be a funny YouTube hoax. We sincerely apologize for this incident. We thank members of the online community who quickly alerted us and allowed us to take immediate action. Although the individuals in question claim it's a hoax, we are taking this incredibly seriously. This was an isolated incident in Conover, North Carolina. The 2 team members have been dismissed, and there are felony warrants out for their arrest. The store has been shut down and sanitized from top to bottom. There is nothing more important or sacred to us than our customers' trust.
So I'm on his side, but something tells me that video won't deliver as many views as the original grossed. Video pick number 3 is an experiment to see how helpful New Yorkers might be if a stranger needed help getting around Washington Square Park. There's a twist. The stranger is a mechanical fellow called a tweenbot. Good for you, New Yorkers. But really, how long before somebody grabs a tweenbot and puts them on eBay? Video pick number 4. Last Wednesday, April 15th, while you were, of course, watching Brian Lehrer Live, you missed the first ever internet-recruited symphony orchestra staged at Carnegie Hall. Here is a mashup of the audition videos that got them there. So how do you get to Carnegie Hall in the 21st century? Practice and file transfer. And video pick number 5 from your Tango Films, Facebook Manners and You, in which we discover how old Facebook etiquette truly is.
Alice hasn't spoken to Timmy since last evening and can't wait to see what his day was like. That's funny. At 2:05 this morning, Timmy changed his relationship status from in a relationship to single. Even more curious, he became friends with Donna Whitehouse at 2:07 a.m. Timmy just bungled rule number 1 of Facebook relationship etiquette. Don't change your relationship status without consulting the other person. What a dope. Alice decides there must be some sort of mistake, that Timmy she knows would never disregard her feelings this way. She sends him a note to see if it was a mistake. Alice waits, and waits, and waits. Alice is tired of waiting, so she decides to stick it to Timmy. She uploads and tags a few embarrassing photographs of Timmy. Timmy may have a hard time making new friends when they see that he likes to dress up in Alice's undergarments. Those photographs sure are funny. But Alice just broke Facebook relationship etiquette rule number 2. Don't post embarrassing photographs of other people. Shame on you, Alice. It's okay, Alice. We all make mistakes.
And those are this week's online video picks. This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Millions have lost their jobs in this recession, 2 million since New Year's alone, and few employers are hiring. If you've been sacked, one option is to make the bad news into an opportunity and go into business for yourself. But how feasible is this right now? What do you do first? We are lucky to have 3 experts with us to help. Martin Lehman with SCORE, the nonprofit advisors to small business. Khalil Rashid with the New York State Labor Services Resource Room in Brooklyn. And via Skype from San Francisco, Rich Sloan, who co-founded Startup Nation, an online resource for entrepreneurs. Welcome, all of you. Thank you very much for coming out and doing this. And Rich Sloan in San Francisco, let me start with you. What is Startup Nation? All right, I think we're not hearing Rich. Okay, we're going to get Rich up in a minute. So, Martin Lehman,
Yes. What
is SCORE?
SCORE is, well, our slogan is Counselors to America's Small Business. We're a national organization. There are 400 chapters around the country, over 12,000 men and women, helping people who either want to go in business and how do I start, or people who are in business and having problems. In today's economy, we find even more of those kinds of people. And our services are free. We're all men and women who have been in business mostly and are retired and are giving back and trying to help America and America's business.
How long has SCORE been doing this?
It's in business for SCORE's in business basically 45 years, believe it or not. And SCORE New York, which is where I work, is one of the first chapters here in the country. And we're one of the largest.
So I would imagine that business is booming right about now.
Yeah, our business has increased, yes, exactly. There is no question about it. Both people who want to start and those people in business having a cash flow, or how do I borrow money, or how do I market my business, running the gamut of what it takes to run a business.
And are there certain kinds of businesses that people are trying to get into most frequently right now?
Well, I would say it's changed. Of course, a lot of people want to start a website. I mean, this has become an easier mode to do it. In other words, instead of opening up a store, well, let's open up a website first. So, yes, you've seen some of that change. And people want to start at-home businesses a little bit more than they used to also. But people still want to start business. It hasn't fallen down because, as I say all the time, this is America, fortunately, and this is New York, and we get a diverse population here who want to start. And people who have been laid off from their jobs, well, maybe I'll go into business.
And we'll get more specific advice from you as we go. Khalil, tell us about the Resource Room in Brooklyn.
Resource Room in Brooklyn, some people do want to start businesses coming in there. We have, as I said, a segment of the Department of Labor that deals with that and helps people along. But most of the people coming in there, my estimate would be 80% are looking for a job, are looking for a way out of a cycle of not being able to get work. And this can run the gamut, because one of my longest unemployed people, 18 months, had been a computer operator for the mayor's office some years ago. And he had left under good circumstances, but he was just too qualified.
Too qualified.
And that's something we haven't heard for a long time, but that happened then. And then there are people who are, of course, underqualified, people who are almost afraid to sit down in front of a computer, you know.
I can see the heads bobbing out there for both of those. Talk about the problem of being too qualified, which I bet a lot of our viewers feel they are facing right now.
Well, that was a problem that it started to occur years ago, and it still exists today to an extent, because employers want to make sure that somebody's going to stay with them if they hire them, because it's not an easy, it's a time-consuming and money-consuming process to look for people and to get people into your organization. So that's very important that they can do it efficiently. You don't want to hire somebody who may move on because their career plans do not mesh with your company's goals.
But there's a catch-22 right now, isn't there? Because a lot of people who may be on the higher paid end of their company's employees are getting laid off so the company can save money.
Exactly.
They have to be prepared, they keep being told, to work for less, work for lower level jobs than they did in the old economy, but then they're told they're too qualified.
Exactly. Those people are probably the people that will have the highest success rate in starting new businesses, because they've been working at a high level managerially, administratively. They know the whoop and the wharf of business, and I would estimate, just from my experience, you know, I have no figures to say, but I would estimate that those folks would be the most likely group to want to go into business and to be able to do it more successfully.
Let's see if we have our audio problem solved in San Francisco. Rich Sloan from Startup Nation, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay now?
Now we can hear you just great. I'm so glad.
Oh, good.
Tell our viewers, what is Startup Nation?
Well, Startup Nation is almost a candy store for those people who are in this very common predicament now, which is, I have to go find a business to start. Many people at this stage are going to be dusting off that dream they've had for a long time that's remained a dream too long. This is the moment that they can go after it, pursue it, and start a business. And Startup Nation has 175,000 pages of free business advice. It's almost like SCORE online. And SCORE is an invaluable resource in communities. We highly recommend the counselors there. I'm very much behind that. I want to mention, Brian, I believe this is a phenomenal time to start up. The reason why is because needs in tough times like this are more urgent. People have screaming needs. They need things done. There are problems that people are experiencing. And so that's why you see Startup Nation's traffic up 210% this year over last year. That's why you see more self-employed people starting businesses. What I mean to say is single-person businesses starting up in this time versus employer-type small businesses.
So what are these screaming needs, or maybe a better way to ask the question is, what new businesses have you seen start up with your help since this whole mess really started about 6 months ago that have succeeded?
Well, first of all, I want to say that it's never a good idea to tell people generally the kinds of businesses to get into. And the reason I believe that is because the most important ingredient in success is your personal passion. What you bring to the table, what you will relentlessly drive forward, what your skill set is, what your interests are. And so the kind of business that you can start today because of technology is very inexpensive. You see all around me here a little home office. I run a huge enterprise from the cushy environs of my home with no overhead. Technology enables me to do that. People are cheap these days. In other words, they're desperately looking for jobs. You can hire people on contract or as employees in an inexpensive way at a very high caliber. You can use the practice of outsourcing, which allows you to move things over to the variable expense side rather than the fixed cost side. And all of these things, you can get a website for free. You know, you can hang your shingle later today. So all of these things tee up an opportunity for people to pursue their passion, and we're seeing people do it by the thousands.
The employee's loss is the entrepreneur's gain. Martin Lehman from SCORE, do you agree that there are crying needs out there that make this a very ripe time to start a business?
Yes. First of all, let me say thank you for mentioning SCORE. Okay, that's number one. And number two, yes, the world is changing. There's no question about it. And business, I started a business years ago, and today if I started it, I might start it differently. There's no question about it. Using, as I said before, using the website, using different techniques that maybe started at home. So there are different ideas today. There's no question about it. And also, most business today, a lot of women are starting business today, which also puts I'm not saying it changes the atmosphere, but to some degree it does. There's no question about it.
So what's the same? You said some things are different now and some things are the same.
Okay, first of all, starting, as you said before, you need a passion. Even though you were in one business, that doesn't mean that your whole life you didn't want to do something else, and you should try that. And then the question is, how do I go about starting this, and how do I do this? And there is a secret formula? There's no secret formula, but I have to study it. And do I know what I'm doing? Before you open that business, open that door, do I know what I'm doing, and who's my customer, and how do I get them in my store?
That's where information technology is so helpful. Right. You know, really is helpful to people. I have an aunt, 96 years old, and she always leans over and says to me, chaos is opportunity. You know?
Exactly.
That's funny.
Right, exactly.
I can tell you, I have a comment to add to this mix about what might be the same and what might be different. What might be the same today is that the customer is still the most important thing in your worldview as an entrepreneur. What can you do to bring value to a customer? How can you connect to the customer? How can you make that customer a perpetual customer? How can you get that customer to talk about you to other prospective customers? That's all the same. The difference today is the medium. The medium today is Facebook and Twitter and your blog and your website. And so it almost takes the old shaking hands at the local networking event into a virtual environment, and you can be hugely powerful in networking, not just in your local meetup, but across the globe now.
Yes,
but don't forget to tell the other person before you change your relationship status.
But it goes back to my original slogan is, who's my customer and how do I get them in my store? Whether it's face-to-face or Facebook or Twitter, how do I approach it, and how do I keep that customer? And how do I get that customer to tell somebody else, hey, he's got the greatest product in the world?
So is the State Labor Department doing that at the Brooklyn Resources Room too? Teaching people how to social network in pursuit of work?
Exactly, because the hardest job in the world is searching for a job. That is the hardest job. That's a 24/7 job. You have to make yourself stop thinking about your problem at some point at night so you can get some rest. But other than that, you're working on that. And we teach people how to introduce themselves on the phone. I say to folks when I teach a workshop, I say, listen, you're in the business of Me Survival Incorporated. And you have a telemarketing division. You're going to start calling companies that might be in the businesses that you can assist. You're not going to wait till you see an ad in the newspapers, because then it's you and 10,000 other people. And this is New York. You get to the newsstand at 6 a.m., somebody else was there at 4 a.m. So you have to start marketing to companies that have not yet begun to advertise. And they're just like we are.
You know what I once did when I was a young guy breaking into the radio business?
All right.
Living in Albany. I had just gotten laid off from a radio job, and I called every radio station in town that was listed in the phone book and told them I heard they had an opening.
I hear you.
Which was absolutely not to my knowledge.
Oh, tremendous.
Do you know I got a job that way?
Tremendous.
Of course, yes, you have to push it, and there's no question about it.
Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer, this is a time also for people, as excited as I am and waving the pom-poms and everything, this is a time of high anxiety for people. And would it be helpful if I gave a quick really quick 5-point prescription for how you move from what do I do to starting it up?
Go. Number one.
Okay. Number one, we talked about passion. You got to play to your passion. That's critically important. No further explanation required. Number two, immediately take stock of the resources you have. Get realistic. If you don't have that amount of money, if you don't have those skills, that's not part of your stock. Take stock of what you have and build on that. Number three, make a commitment to your concept. A really tight 1 or 2 sentence statement about what your business is critical. And you want to make sure that you are able to feel very comfortable with the value that comes from this statement that you create. So commit to your concept. The fourth thing, Google like mad. You have almost a brain augmentation available to you in Google to collect data, to do research, to find relationships, to become the expert truly in what you are endeavoring to do. The fifth thing I would recommend is test drive. Run it by people, not the people who love you. Run it by people who don't love you. Run it by sober people like Martin, who are going to say yes or no to you. Push back. Maybe you too, Brian. Run it by people, so test drive it. That's play to your passion, take stock, commit to your concept, Google like mad, and test drive.
And we'll put those 5 viewers on our website later on. So by tomorrow, you can go to brianlehrer.tv if you want to review those. Did you want to react to any of those 5?
Yes, I agree with all 5. Obviously, you can't dispute them, of course. And I also found when you're in business, it's a 24-hour-a-day job. I used to be in business, and I'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd say, oh, I bought those green blouses, and I bought those green blouses. And then I'd go back to sleep because I put it off my brain, and I put it on a piece of paper. And I woke up the next morning, and I said, those green blouses, what was I thinking? So my point is, it's a passion, yes, but you live with it 24 hours a day.
Committing to your concept. First of all, creating your concept. I think that's the most important thing because that keeps you sort of in the lane. You have distractions all day as to what you're doing, what you're trying to do. And committing to your conscience, and as I say, committing to your conscience too, because your concept is going to be from your conscience. And that is what is going to guide you and really keep you moving in the right direction, keep you making it what you always wanted it to be.
So let's look at part of a video, excuse me, from the legendary Stephen Covey, author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He starts this by talking about one of the barriers to employment or new businesses that people seem to put up against themselves.
Well, most people tend to become deterministic, that they are a captive of their past or of their present circumstances or of the social weather that surrounds them or their physical weather.
For their family,
their upbringing, what my parents did to me and so forth. The question I often ask is, are you a product of nature or nurture? And almost everyone says it's nurture or a combination. And I try to make a point that it's neither. It's a product of choice, because you can choose your response to both nature and nurture. You could have, for instance, a genetic disease inside you and never get it, simply because you make the lifestyle choices of the proper food and exercise and medicine, or you could have been abused as a child. You don't have to abuse your own child. You have the power to reinvent yourself. That's not so with animals. So the space between stimulus and response is the freedom to choose your response.
Stephen Covey, from his own website, Success Television. You run into that a lot with your clients? Barriers that the way people. I think the main point there was that people are captive.
I'd like Khalil to translate that whole thing.
It was a little.
Well, I thought I understood it. I realized, he was speaking the language of self-help books, which is
too medical.
It is true that.
But if you feel like you're the captive of your circumstances or your past,
then you really, yes, you do have a problem. I always point out to people, listen. You have been a problem solver for all of your life. Nobody just brought you here on charity. And you may not enjoy solving all the problems that you have, but you are an experienced problem solver. So take yourself in hand and start to solve this problem and realize that anything that does not help you is hurting you. If you have an inferiority complex, dismiss it for this time being. Coach yourself out of it because it's not helping. If it was helping, okay, maybe you could keep it. So,
Khalil, I have a little supplement, as usual, to add on to what you're saying there.
Sure.
It's that
we
all have our shortcomings, Brian, except you, of course. And so that's called reality, folks. Now, one of the best ways that you can get around your shortcomings is by having someone very positive who can support you along the way. And I know Martin's probably smiling as I say this, but the truth is you got to get a mentor. You have to get someone who will stand up for you, who will give you the positive reinforcement, the encouragement, help you avoid things that you are likely to do wrong and sail past the problems that you inevitably will have.
Yes, but you really have to make the right person to go to. I mean, there are a lot of people who say they know things, and will they really solve your problem?
Right.
So, yes, okay.
Or
I
are
think
they
the score
solving their
mentors,
own?
yes, of course, we're all 100%. But basically, you still have to, I was in the retail business, so someone coming to me, well, I can understand the retail business. If somebody is doing something completely different, well, I'd have to think more about it or get somebody else. So it depends on the path you're trying to take, and have I been on that path?
Martin, did you sell green blouses?
Did I sell? Some of them I sold, and the rest I had to mark down.
So you were the one. Did you? Is there a typical timeline to making money? Is there a certain amount of time that the people you advise on startups, Martin, should expect before they turn a profit?
Well, okay, that all depends upon what you're trying to do. Are you trying to open up a chain of stores? Are you trying to do a website? And so you have to figure partly cash flow always comes into it. How much does it take to start? How much does it take to run my business? How much does my product cost? And then you figure your markup. What can I sell this for? Am I competing with Walmart, or am I competing with a high-priced Tiffany's? So who is my customer? Back to what I'm saying. And can I look? Some things you can make 100% profit, and some you only make 15% profit. Depends upon. But you have to figure this out. And can I, at the end of the day, have I made a living and paid my employees, and can I go home and eat dinner?
Yeah. So Khalil, how do you keep your people encouraged?
By letting them know that they, first of all, by listening to them. Number one. You have to give a person back their personhood when they're unemployed and they're feeling depressed, because their sense of identity is very low. So first of all, be with them, hear what they have to say. And then let them know that, number one, they have value, and that they are taking the right steps. They're taking a workshop in resume writing, interviewing techniques, whatever. They've come to the right place. They've come here. We didn't force them to come here, so we applaud them for taking steps for themselves. And we then try to let them know there are many techniques. One technique that worked recently for someone, you buy products every day at the supermarket, look at the 800 number, call the company and ask them, I hope this doesn't start a wave, call the company and ask them if they have any jobs available in any area. This is another way of saying don't wait to see something advertised in the newspaper. And,
do a little role play with me. We had some news just before we went on the air. I don't know if you've heard this yet, that General Motors is going to shut down just about all its U.S. plants for 9 weeks this summer.
Wow.
So I'm an auto worker coming to you and saying, Khalid, I don't know if they're even going to open these plants ever again.
That's right.
What do I do? What can I do?
I would say, number one, don't project too much into the future. Number one, they may open them up again. They say they're going to. But number two, at the same time, start thinking about what else you can do. You have skills in some type of discipline that has caused you to be able to do a job. These are transferable often to other types of jobs. If you worked on an assembly line and had to pay attention to detail closely, you might be able to work in a different type of business that requires close attention to physical, mechanical detail. So know what your transferable skills are by distilling out what job you did and what it took to do that job. So that's one thing.
And if they go to Startup Nation, Rich?
What will you're asking? What can they?
They've got a great resource. They've got a great resource.
Well, if they go to Startup Nation, there are a few things that they can do. Number one, they can read the article "Now's the Time to Start Up" and learn about necessity businesses, screaming needs businesses, no downside businesses, franchise businesses, all those kinds of things. But I think more importantly, at Startup Nation, they can network with other entrepreneurs who may have sailed through this problem, these stormy waters previously, and found good solutions. So it's a huge networking environment there for people who are in business, and I think that will be very valuable.
Martin, people over 45 are getting laid off a lot, again, to cut expenses among some of the higher paid employees, and it's taking them longer to find work if they can find it at all. Is starting a business over 45 a good idea?
It doesn't matter if you're 25, 45, or 85. If you really want to do it, and as I said before, with the passion, and you know you can do it, age shouldn't be a consideration. There's no question about it. Can I do this? It's really whether, back to whatever kind of a business, can I do this? Yes, I can do this. And you must have the enthusiasm.
I think boomers, it's arguable, are better equipped to start
exactly.
business.
I was going to finish it. And they also have
the experience.
Yeah.
They have the life experiences, or what? Even if they were going into a business that's different than the one they've been in all their life, but they have business experience, they have knowledge, they know how to go about doing something.
So at the end of the day, do people come back to you and say, Mr. Rashid, thank you so much for your help, I got a job, or do you just lose track of the people who come through your revolving door?
Quite often they come back. They come back because it is very real, you know, that when they get a feeling that someone hears them and that they are a person. One time I just offered to do a resume for a gentleman that couldn't type, didn't know what to do, and I said, okay, I've got time, I'll do this for you. And there were tears in his eyes, you know, and I was just doing my job. I didn't have anything else to do at that moment, so I was doing what I do. But he was so taken aback by the fact that somebody would help him to that extent. You know, so yeah, it's really...
And Rich, since your site is also a social network, do your success stories wind up networking with each other and helping other people plant seeds?
Oh yes, absolutely. There is incredible camaraderie going on inside of the Startup Nation forums. I can tell you that people find customers there, they find supporters and mentors there, they find simple answers to what might seem like complicated but very individualized questions. I think it's Startup Nation, like other sites, frankly, is a great way to get support, get answers, and move forward. It's all about moving forward, and you find each step just takes you a little bit closer. Ultimately, you find yourself at the top of the mountain.
Martin, give me a score, recent success story to end this.
Well, okay, we have a restaurant that opened here in New York called Clee Brasserie, and it came to us, I wasn't the counsel, another gentleman helped him with his business plan, walked him through, and was able to get a loan, and today he's one of the biggest and best restaurants in New York, and thriving, doing very well. So this makes us, this is our pay. We don't get paid, but our pay is, hey, I can talk about Clee Brasserie, look how he succeeded. And Clee Brasserie will come back to us again. Hey, I'm having some other problems, help me. So it's an ongoing thing.
All right. I think you've all given a lot of people a lot more optimism tonight.
Yeah, I hope so.
The New York State Labor Services Brooklyn Resource Room.
Yes.
Score.
625 Fulton Street.
635 Fulton Street. 625 Fulton Street to go in person.
www.scorenyc.org.
And startupnation.com. Thank you all. Good luck. Now, as we noted earlier, today is Earth Day, April 22nd. But in Washington, they celebrated on Sunday. An estimated 100,000 people came to support environmental causes, see some new technology, and hear the music. This video from UPI.com.
The environment is our keepsake. It is for us.
Well, without a good environment, there's really not going to be life on the planet.
Today's the Earth Day concert. They have all sorts of bands. The Flaming Lips, Mo, and Los Lobos are playing.
Earth Day has gone from Earth Day to Earth Week to Earth Month to Earth Season. We're all taking advantage of the weather and the beautiful setting. It's the people plotting themselves down between Congress and the White House. It's very symbolic to be here.
I try to live a little bit of a greener lifestyle, so I cycled down here, and yeah, I wanted to learn about things I can do. I'm already doing a little bit, like riding my bike to work.
We're kicking off the 40th anniversary of Earth Day. Our theme is the Green Generation. It's an anybody can join.
There's a lot of interaction activities with bicycling and how you can show how the environment, work with the environment to improve your bicycles.
They're doing quite a kind of showing different inventions universities have come up with creating biofuels, with irrigation systems, which I thought were really neat. There's things about a vegetarian lifestyle or a more sustainable lifestyle.
We were really surprised to find out it takes over 1,000 years for plastic to break down.
Over the last 40 years, almost 40 years, Earth Day has been part of growing the movement worldwide. We're now in 180 countries with 1 billion people participating worldwide.
The environment is something we all share, and it's important for us to know how we're affecting it.
We're as interested, if not more interested, in civic action, which is getting people to reach out to their governments that it's time for everybody. If the citizens are going to get into the act and buy green products and have a healthier, greener lifestyle, then the government shouldn't be in a position of following. They need to lead us.
What inspires me about today is just, how many people come out, how many people are willing to come out to, promote the environment, and just, it's, a fun way to get everybody thinking about ways that they can live green.
That from UPI.com. And by the way, Earth Day was founded as a teach-in by the late Gaylord Nelson, senator from Wisconsin. It helped lead to the passage of the Clean Water and Clean Air Acts in the early 1970s and the creation of the EPA. Up next, stalking the City Council. What do they do all day? This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues.
Watch Canapé, the French cultural magazine show, Thursdays on CUNY TV.
Mama was queen of the mambo, Papa was king of the Congo. Deep down in the jungle, I started banging my first bongo. Every monkey like to be in my place instead of me, 'cause I'm the king of bongo, baby, I'm the king of bongo bong. I went to the big town where there is a lot of sound, from the jungle to the city looking for a bigger crown. So I play my boogie for the people of big city, but they don't go crazy when I'm banging on my boogie. I'm the king of the bongo, king of the bongo bong. Hear me when I come, baby. King of the bongo, king of the bongo bong. Nobody like to be in my place instead of me, 'cause nobody go crazy when I'm banging on my boogie. I'm a king without a crown, hanging loose in a big town, but I'm a king of bongo, baby, I'm the king of bongo bong.
Hi, how are you doing today?
What looks good?
Our special today is shrimp scampi. It's been sitting around for about a week.
Excuse me. What time are you guys leaving? We're gonna rob your house tonight.
Don't you wish there were warnings to protect you from life's risks? With diabetes, there is one. It's called A1C, a simple blood test that helps measure your risk of a heart attack and other complications. Learn more at diabetesac.org.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Do you have any idea what members of City Council actually do? How effective are they as the city's legislature? The nonprofit news organization City Limits decided to find out by tracking members' every move for a week. It took 6 reporters. City Limits investigations editor Jarrett Murphy is here. So is a brand new member of the council, Julissa Ferreras, who represents the 21st District in Queens. Her district includes Corona, East Elmhurst and parts of Jackson Heights and Elmhurst. Welcome both of you to the program.
Thank you.
Jared, tell us about your article. What did you set out to do by following members of City Council for a full week?
Well, we watched the term limits debate last fall, as did everyone else. And one of the things that I was struck by was that for more than a week, maybe 2 weeks' time, the City Council, the New York City Council, was actually in the spotlight of New York City's media. It was the top political story. That was unusual because the body usually labors under a certain amount of obscurity. On the day of the vote, we actually watched a live City Council debate, televised live on New York 1, that had never happened before that I recalled. And the debate we saw showed a council that, rather than being unanimous, which is what normally is the case, or close to unanimous, it was very sharply divided. It was a passionate and closely watched debate. And what it revealed for us at City Limits was that we, despite the fact that we go to meetings all the time, talk to city council members all the time, we really don't understand sort of what makes the body tick. And so we decided we wanted to look at what the council's powers are, how they use them, how they don't use them, how well they use them, and what does make up an average day or an average week in the life of the institution and the individual members.
So what was that week like?
Well, it was busy. A lot does go on there, and it was a story of contradictions. There was a hearing about Parks Department policy that was packed, where people waited a couple hours for a chance to speak, and where dozens of council members floated in and out to ask questions. And other meetings that were poorly attended and where council members showed up late and where there were sort of perfunctory votes taken. There were council members that obviously were putting in a lot of work to what they were doing. And there were council members who were, I think, feeling pressed and drawn in several different directions by all their assignments. And there were members of the public who were very much engaged in what was going on in the council, who were in the hearings, even if they were poorly attended. But in many cases, the media was not well represented there, so people who weren't in the room weren't seeing what the council was doing. It's not a surprise that 51 people with different backgrounds would have a very diverse and complicated picture, and that's what we found.
Does that sound like your typical week so far? I realize you've only been in the council for 4 weeks.
Yes, I've been in the council for 4 weeks, but I was the chief of staff to the council member prior. And yes, basically it really does resonate, and sometimes it can be very frustrating when an issue is strong for one council member out of the 51, or even 2 or 3, and we don't get the support from the community, and there's only so much outreach you can do, but if we don't have the media there helping us to bring in the bodies. When we had these very well-attended hearings on term limits, right next door we had the Willets Point issue on the very day. So we were leading this in the 21st Council District and trying to find justice for Willets Point, and people were popping in one hearing, going into the next one right next door. So it was actually, I think, one of the busiest days in the council that I had ever seen.
And I can't believe I'm hearing this, an elected official who wants more media, more sunlight on what you do.
Absolutely, because I also think that it is our responsibility so that our voters and our residents, just, even if you're not a voter, we have a lot of just permanent residents living in my particular district, to have a better understanding of how the council works. We often have these debates when we're candidates, and then we go back into the council and people want to know, what is it that you do what do you mean she's in City Hall? What does that mean? And I think that articles like this and conversations such as this one is what gives us a better definition of what it means when I'm not in the district office and that I am in City Hall, attending a hearing and going to the stated and so on and so forth.
Jared, one of the impressions that your article gives is that because of the current term limits law, the fact that a council member can only serve for 8 years, that they're not really there to be engaged in that job, that they're there to get experience or connections to do other jobs in the future to benefit themselves. Mm-hmm. Is that what you were trying to say?
That's a temptation that is definitely there. I think different council members respond to it differently, but that is, even people who supported the retention of the eight-year term limit now has been extended to 12 for this current group at least. Even supporters of retaining the 8 years admit that that is true, that people who have come to the council knowing that they had a very hard limit on how long they could be there had to be thinking about what was going to happen next.
So how does that affect public policy?
Well, I think the way it affects it, for the most part, is individual members sort of have to operate as individuals. They have to be looking out for their issues. They have to be thinking about
That's
building a
always
name
the
for
case,
themselves.
though, in legislatures, right? They're looking out, if nothing else, for their reelection from the people in their district.
True, but it can actually lead, in some cases, particularly among members who might be seeking a citywide office or a borough-wide office, that they have to think about issues beyond their district, so they aren't as responsive to the voters that sent them there. And it makes coalition building a little more difficult, because you could have people who are potential rivals for a post who might be natural allies on an issue, not supporting each other simply because it's not in their electoral interest, which is a very real interest for them.
But I think there's also the other side to it. There's also a very clear timeline of if you need to get things done, you have 8 years to do it, as opposed to just putting it in the back burner and letting these issues kind of fester way back there. But you have 8 years to build a coalition, to say, I have to lobby 30 members to be able to sign on to this legislation that makes sense in the district, whether it is to reform, to repeal Erstat, or to send messages out, to partner truly with the state and the city. I think that in a way, the 8 years or the 12 years, because there are 4 additional years, but it's still a term limit. It's not indefinite.
So what are some of these issues for you? You're brand new. You probably have come in and you've got all this idealism, and you're looking at all these old, jaded members of the city council, and you go, I'm going to really try to get stuff done for the people of Corona and Elmhurst and Jackson Heights. What are those things?
Well, I think that one of the things is to be able to build those coalitions that I just talked about.
But that's a means to some end.
Right. One of the first things that I believe that we need to work on is our issue with housing and affordable housing in the district, to ensure that the policies and the commitments that the mayor and the council both voted on when it came to Willets Point, that all those things are adhered to, and that the project of Willets Point really does happen.
The controversial redevelopment project there.
Absolutely. And understanding that if they committed to affordable housing, the 30%, that they can't, and they be meaning the body oftentimes, that we don't turn back and say, well, maybe 30% is too much.
That's a promise, that if they build all this new stuff in Willets Point, that 30% of the housing will be affordable.
Yes, and that's written. That was in the legislation, that we have fair market jobs for the minority-owned businesses, and also that we have union-binding jobs. That we have jobs that are going to be fair and equal across the board. And I think that now that we're coming into these economic times, there's going to be that kind of desire to switch and say, well, this doesn't make sense. And now the administration is talking about phasing the project, where that before it was, we're just going to redevelop the entire Willets Point. Now they want to do one. Well, they don't want to call it phasing. They want to call it rolling. So roll 1 and roll 2 and roll 3.
Now, it's clear to me from your answer and looking at you as you're giving your answer that you really care about the issues that you just articulated.
Absolutely.
Are you having the experience of coming in and saying, come on, folks, I want to get something real done here, and all you 7-year veterans, 8-year veterans, you're jaded, you're just looking out for your rear ends?
Well, I don't think they're all jaded. I think that we have very good, assertive council members that we can get and partner with. I think being a member of the city council is New Yorkers that really believe. There's New Yorkers of those 51 members. There are people that believe in their district. They believe that they can make change, and we have to build coalitions. There's the only way you can get anything done in the
country. I don't think the problem, and certainly the problem we saw, if we saw a problem during our week there, was not that that there are venal or jaded people in city council seats. That there might be a few who fit the description, and others who fit quite the opposite. If there's a problem facing the council beyond the very complicated way that the term limits affects it, it's that they have fairly limited powers. Under the charter, they can do a lot of oversight. They have some power over the land use process. They have an ability to vote on the budget en masse, but they can't really kind of tinker with the nuts and bolts of it. So they're pretty limited in terms of the power they have. They're limited in terms of the resources they have compared to the agencies they oversee and budget for. And in part, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy or a self-fulfilling cycle where, because of their lack of power, the media does not pay enough attention to them. And then one of their major powers, which is to shine the light on particular issues, is enervated because of that, and that sort of feeds on itself. That's probably more of an issue than council members' motivations being askew.
Right. So speaking of innovation and speaking of being in the dark about government, let's watch this satirical video released by the Sunlight Foundation, a Washington, D.C. nonprofit that is keeping Washington's feet to the internet fire.
Do you suffer from taxpayer cynicism, political ennui, constituent apathy? These might be symptoms of congressional data frustration, or CDF. You're not alone. Over 50% of Americans suffer from these symptoms, brought on by a lack of access to meaningful political data. You don't have to live like this any longer. It's time to reclaim your government. Sunlight Elena Zinasek is here. Sunlight Elena Zinasek works by taking congressional data and turning it into XML so that it can be used in RSS feeds, APIs, and widgets, which are then put into the internet tubes so that they can be easily accessed from your computer, resulting in informed citizen euphoria. Sunlight Elena Zinasek is for everyone, particularly if you don't know how legislation works or how your tax dollars are spent. Side effects include, but are not limited to, educated and empowered citizens, congressional accountability, and ultimately government transparency. Sunlight Elena Zinasek, making government data work, one website at a time.
Sunlight Elena Zinasek, what disinfectant does New York politics need?
Probably more attention to what the council does, and probably a real look at how we've apportioned power in the city. It's been 20 years this year since the city council in its current form really took shape after the Supreme Court threw out the Board of Estimate, which was an old way the city was governed, and gave, well, it was thought to have given the council more power, and it did. But I don't know that those powers have worked out to the end that the designers thought they would. And Mayor Bloomberg, for more than a year, has talked about impaneling a charter revision commission, which would look at the way power is divided among the mayor, the comptroller, the public advocate council. That could happen in the next year or so, and I think when it does, it might be time to take a look at what kind of legislature we want the city to have, given that we have a very strong mayor.
What kind do you? Do you want the city council to have more power?
I think so. I think the city council should have more power. I think there are talented people there. I think with more power, the media would pay attention, and that might help to get rid of the untalented people.
You know the old joke about city council, and this predates the 1989 reforms. What's the difference between city council and a rubber stamp? A rubber stamp leaves an impression. But that was before the reforms.
For that.
That was, I think that came from the former Parks Commissioner, Henry Stern.
Well,
right?
I think the city council also reflects New York City. If we look at the council, we see people that come from all walks of life that have worked really hard to get elected. And I also think that when we have situations like the executive orders that protected immigrants and their status from the agencies, this is where the city council works, and these are things that directly affect our city.
But your article mentioned all sorts of examples of council members arriving late and voting yes on everything across the board. What is that a function of?
That's a function of the volume of the work that's presented to them. You know, the city council has 43 some odd committees. They've expanded a lot over time. One of the main reform proposals floating out there is to streamline that a bit.
Are people on too many committees?
You know, one council member I rode around with, Robert Jackson, is on 8, as well as various task forces and negotiating teams and such. And, you know, sometimes, you know, you can only be one place at one time. Council members literally have 2, sometimes 3 council members going on at once. And what that leads to is people who do come, take the day off work to come testify. They want to see their council member, but they're at somebody else's hearing because they have to be there too. And it leads to a sort of breakdown in confidence.
Or at a press conference, or at a meeting in your district office, or
talking to Brian Lehrer.
Right.
That's right. Where are you now when you're supposed to be back in your district in Queens?
Right.
How many committees are you on?
I'm on 6 committees.
6? You've only been there 4 weeks and you're on 6 committees.
I'm on 6 committees. I've done hearings already and participated in the State of Council. I think in the State of Council hearings where we're eye on all, it really is something that you kind of walk in, they're pulling you out for press conferences, you have to go across the street, you have a meeting with your PTA president at the district office.
How big is your staff?
My staff currently is 6 people.
6 people. So you have to work 29 hours a day to be in all the places you're supposed to be and to be up enough on all the issues you're supposed to be up on?
Absolutely. 29. 8 days a week.
Is there a big issue looming right now that I should know about?
Right now it's just the budget. We have a $57 billion budget and all the cuts, and everyone wants to explain to me why their cut should not happen and how important it is that I vote in their favor. And it's listening to all these conversations and discretionary funds and so on.
This is where the council has the most power,
Yes.
isn't it? And it's a vital power, the actual city budget.
It does. It does pass the city budget. It's constrained in how it can look at it. You know, Congress and other legislatures can break the budget into parts based on policy area. You know, the Congress votes on the transportation budget, the defense budget. The City Council largely has to sign off on the budget as a single entity, and that prevents some of the kind of policy tinkering that a legislature could otherwise exert, because it is a $5 billion piece of legislation. But you know, it does have to give that yes vote.
We just have a few seconds left, but I get also from your article that so much of City Council is spinning its wheels and cutting red tape that you aren't sure how effective it can be for that workload.
I'm sorry?
Because of the workload.
Yes, that's true. I mean, the workload is, you know, people voting aye on all, it's not because they're lazy or like woke up late that day. It's just there's a vast amount of material that comes across their desk and they have to deal with it.
Aye on all.
That's what you want people to remember.
No, I don't. I think the City Council is a very important entity, and in having worked for a national nonprofit, I understand that everyone watches New York City. People are very interested in understanding how New York City works, and especially the council. Working with Latino elected officials across the country, New York City is always an interesting place.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Good luck in the City Council. Good luck with City Limits. You're doing great stuff, in-depth investigative reporting. And finally tonight, unlike the Domino's pizza video we saw earlier, something pleasant to watch. It has to do with science and something called the Torricelli experiment, carried out in 1644. Look it up. Not important right now, but look it up. The video is just cool.
Because the Torricelli experiment is portable. And it's portable because the mercury column is short. Why is it short? Because mercury is a very dense liquid, a liquid so dense that cannonballs float in it.
Any idea how many thermometers they had to break to do that? Or how many pirates they had to ask before they could get a cannonball? And that's it for this week's show. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30 or anytime online at CUNY.TV. Next week is New York Wildflower Week, and we will celebrate it with some great visuals. And tune in to my daily radio show, 10 a.m. on WNYC Radio. Tomorrow morning, steroids for intellectuals, brain-enhancing drugs. Are they ethical? They are in use. That's 10 a.m. on WNYC 93.9 FM and AM 820. Have a great night.